Chevre, was macht ihr? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis zu beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Yud Gimel Sivan. Yesterday was the end of Yimei Tashlumin. That means that this week, primarily, it was the story of Matan Torah, Shavuos, and the continual days that followed, and how we're still in a state of elation, Naso. As is well known, the word of the Frierdiker Rebbe that he said immediately following the days of Shavuos, that he shouldn't be disturbed unless it was matters of urgency. And he said a line that Ich bin noch auf dem Berg, I'm still on the mountain, I'm still at Sinai. So we see from this that a man, a Yid, a Chosid, is meant to try to grasp, hold on, as long as he can, to the sense of inspiration and elevation and the heights of what we reached during the holiday of Shavuos, and to grab on, hold on to it as long as he can, that it should last. It should be impactful, and the more we're on the mountain, downloading and absorbing, the greater the impact. So today we're going to speak about something which in a way you could say is directly related to what we spoke about last week before Shavuos. I would say this is in a way part 2, and how it's connected to Parshas Shavuot in a direct way. Before we begin, I just want to say that the Rebbe used to always bring very, very stark on Parshas Naso, and would point out that concerning, let's say, for example, learning Pirkei Avos now, round 2, because the Chabad custom is to learn Pirkei Avos from the whole summer, from after Shavuos till Rosh Hashanah. And the Rebbe would say that now we're starting Pirkei Avos again. It's a whole different Pirkei Avos, because we've been revitalized, rejuvenated from Matan Torah. So the learning of Perek Aleph this Shabbos is in an altogether higher realm and level than it was before Shavuos. And in general, this is, I don't know what the source of this is, but many people pointed out. I remember hearing this in Cheder, that Parshas Naso is the longest Parsha, and it's 176 psukim. This week we're swimming in it, we're drowning in it. We get an overload, more psukim than usual to live with, because this represents following our acceptance of receiving the Torah at Sinai. We exult in it, we're joyous in it, exultating, whatever the word is. By the way, there's 176 psukim. It's also being pointed out, and if somebody knows the significance of 176, please let me know, that the longest kapitel in Tehillim is Kuf Yotes with 176 psukim, and that's related to what we're going to talk about today. And the longest Masechta in Shas is Bava Basra, which has Daf, Kov, Ayin, Vav. So 176 must be some special significance that both, not only Torah Shebechsav, the longest Parsha, but in Torah Shebal Peh, the longest Gemara, and in Nevi'im, Tilim, Tanakh, we see also the longest kapitel. Has 176 psukim. Okay, in this week's Parsha, it says the following, that after the Nisim brought their donations, so then, and it was oxen and wagons, then the pasuk says that Hashem told Moshe, give those gifts to the Leviim. This is in Chamishi of Parshas Naso. And it says in the pasuk that Eshtei Vayikach Moshe es hagolos es habokav yitnesim el Leviim, he gave to the Leviim. And then the pasuk says, Eshtei hagolos es arbas habokav nosnu bnei Gershon kfi avidosom, veis arba hagolos es shvenis habokav nosnu bnei Merari kfi avidosom. So he gave 4 wagons, 2 wagons, and 4 oxen to Gershon's descendants, and he gave 4 wagons and 8 oxen to Merari's descendants for their work that they were meant to do in the Beis Hamikdash. But then it says, "V'levnei kahos leinosan ki avodas hakodesh aleim b'kosef iso." But to the descendants of Kahos, he did not give anything, because their work involved the holy equipment, which they had to carry on their shoulders, not in a wagon. Now, from this we learn out a mitzvah say from the Torah, that the Orain, for example, the Orain had to be carried on shoulders. And over here we have a very famous Gemara in Saita, which makes a comment on what happened in Tanakh, in Shmuel. First I'm going to read you a brief paragraph in English saying what happened in Shmuel Beis, that when David HaMelech recaptured and he got back the Oren from the Plishtim, he put the Oren on a new chariot driven by Uzzah, and he had forgotten that you're not allowed to put the Oren on a wagon. So then, while David HaMelech was singing praises to Hashem, the Oren broke free, broke loose, and Uzzah rushed to try to stop it from moving. And while Uzzah was doing that, he was struck down from Hashem, and it caused him to pass away. David didn't understand why this happened, and he called Achitophel, and Achitophel repeated the pasuk from over here, this parsha, and he told him that you should have known that you're not allowed to put the Oren on a wagon. It has to be put only on the shoulders of the Levium. And the Gemara in Saita says the following. Dorash Rava said, David. Why was David punished? I'm sorry, I usually start with a prayer. I'm getting old, my friends. And this is going to be the prayer that I was going to start with. So let's rewind for a second. For the shleimus, you have to know how the video, to insert the beginning. I'm going to say a pasuk from Tilim, Kuf Yates, which I said before is going to be connected, Kuf Yates, to today's talk. Like song, like music, were your statutes to me, Beveis Meguroi, and Rashi translates Beveis Meguroi, in the house of my worry. Beveis Meguroi, Beveis Dagosi. So David HaMelech actually says, the Torah is like music to me, like song, in my house of worry. Okay, now we'll explain this pasuk today in Mitzvah Hashem a bit, and now after he said this prayer, which seems to sound like a positive thing, if we take this pasuk by itself, it seems amazing. Wouldn't you think if your son or your student, or even for yourself, if someone says a statement, when I heard your voice, it was like music to my ears. That sounds like a tremendous praise. It sounds beautiful. Like poetry. If you want to make a person feel good, you say, whenever you talk to me, whenever I hear your voice, it's like music to me. And over here, let's go back to the Gemara in Saita. David. What was the mistake? That David forgot a clear pasuk that says you're not allowed to put the Aron on a wagon. He put the Aron on a wagon. Somebody died because of that. And his punishment, that the death came about through him, and that he did something against the Eibishter, was, this whole thing came about because David, he called the Torah song. This is the Gemara. The Eibishter tells David, Divrei Torah shekosaben hasoyef einecha boi veinenu ata koira yisens mirais. The words of Torah that the pasuk says about it, that if you blink and it's just gone, in other words, it's like beyond all of us. You're calling it songs. Hareini machshilcha bedover shafil tinoike shel beis rabban yoydem oisoi. The chsiv of nei kahos leinason ki avedis hakodesh v'goymer v'iyu aseh ba'agalta. So the Gemara says, I'm going to punish you, Hashem said, with something that even children know about. Because you have a ben chamish lemikra. A 5-year-old knows the pasuk already. That you're not allowed to put the Aron in a wagon. I'm going to punish you that you're going to forget temporarily even that which 5-year-olds know. Teneka shel beis rabban. And you put the Aron in a wagon. So obviously the Klotz Kasha is a very famous question, which all the commentators speak about it. and we're going to give the Hasidic perspective. For sure, that this Gemara, looking at it at face value, seems very, very strange. Number one, what's the problem with calling Torah Zmiris? Like we said before, it sounds good. Number two, we know by the Eibishter everything is precise. B'diuk, meduyek. So what's the midah keneged midah? Why is the punishment that he forgot that halacha, that the oren has to be on the shoulders and not on a wagon? So this is discussed at length in Chassidus, primarily in the Alter Rebbe, in Kuntes Achen, called David Zmiris Karisalu, that's Kuntes Achen Vov. What I'm going to say now is primarily based on a shir that I heard from Rabbi Yoel in Kuntes Inyana Shel Teres Chassidus, Perik Gimel. I've mentioned this already before. For sure, some of the things we're going to speak today, we've spoken about before. And I'm just on a personal note, as a teacher, I could tell you that Ois Gimel of Kuntes Inyana Shel Teres Chassidus, I've repeated in the last many decades, many times. Sometimes you learn something, and it's so fundamental, and it's so clear, it's so awesome, it's so amazing, the way the Rebbe put it forth. The rollout of the way it's written over there is like, I haven't found any other place where it's so organized and systematic, and I'm going to repeat what it says over there. So, that's the basis for today's shir. So number one, let's go back. The question, it seems like, what's the problem that he called it Zmiris? Number one. Number two, why is the punishment that he forgot about it? That he forgot this halacha. Now the truth is, there's a lot more to what I'm going to say if we learn all the other maimarim about it and did many different explanations and many different answers. We're giving one aspect, and להמשיך to what we spoke last week, that what is the Torah? So last week, I think if we mentioned, we said that the Rufte von Torah besteht nicht im Wasser, der Rufte von Torah besteht nicht im Wasser gegeben geworden, nur im Wert ist gesagt. That the accomplishment, the novelty of Sinai was not in what was given, but in who gave it. In other words, that then Hashem injected God DNA essence that becomes united with us. Today I'm going to say it slightly different, but it's going to be the same point and the same message. The Ruftu von Torah besteht nicht in was es tutuf, nor in was es is. The awesomeness in Torah does not consist in what it can accomplish and in what it accomplishes, but in what it is. Everything is measured, if we measure something by what it accomplishes, that's really something external. And guess what? Even if we measure something, what it accomplishes, and even if we testify that only it could accomplish this and this thing, that thing still doesn't express the totality of what's really going on over here. And this is the problem with what David did. So let's first start off with, on a simple level, we'll go from level to level. So some people say that, what does it mean when David HaMelech said, Megurai is, we said, in the house of worry, that's what Rashi says, but Megurai could also mean my fears. There's other Mefarshim that say that. Megurai could also mean my travelings, my journeys, my exile. When he's on the run, he's like a fugitive. He's people want to kill him. So according to all these interpretations, the bottom line is that Torah gave him solace. Torah gave him comfort. Torah was his sanctuary. Torah was that brought him peace. According to all these interpretations. But then the question is, why do we use the expression zmiros? He could have said shir. And many of the Farshim on this pasuk actually talk about it, that his punishment was because he said zmiros instead of shir, and in other places we call the Torah shir. I'm not getting into that point. I want to talk about how Chassidus talks about zmiros. Zmiros could also be translated, the Targum translates zmiros as a shvach, a praise. And zmiros also means to cut. Like it's explained in Chassidus, where it speaks about Psukkah de Zimra. It's the verses of cutting, of pruning. We cut away the klippus. So Zmiris Hayluchakecha means how the Torah is also cutting away, cutting off, destroying, getting rid of the negativity, the negative forces that are involved, the dangers that are involved in David's life. So what's the connection between all these things? So the Alter Rebbe explains in David's Midas Karisaluhu, I'm explaining more according to the Alter Rebbe, that what David meant to say was that when he was on the run, when he's in the utter darkness, and the walls are closing in, and he's at rock bottom, the lowest of the lowest, the abyss of the abyss, down in the mud, in the darkness, in the cement, in the dungeon. What was he gave? It was a praise. This praise, the meditation. When he learned Torah, he meditated about the awesomeness of Torah. As the Alter Rebbe explains in Igeres HaKodesh, in Kuntas Achen over there. And I'll read you the words where he talks about how you have a diktuk echad. A diktuk echad means a tiny, being careful about a specific requirement of the Torah. So a diktuk kal, the observance of one minor specification. A diktuk kal of the Torah, keeping and being careful about one minor specification, draws down infusion throughout all the worlds. If you do it properly, it uplifts all the worlds. It sustains all the worlds. It's giving vitality to all the worlds. Not only this world, but also the Eilam Yonim. And the Alter Rebbe says, so when a person meditates, how the Eibishter is infinite, and all what's going into the world is a bit compared to what is more, so the person is going to realize and get all excited. And that's what David is saying when he realized what Torah is. That what one diktuk echad of through keeping one diktuk echad, how much it's changing and having impact and transforming all of the galaxy, time, space, and universe and beyond. So that made him feel good when he was learning Torah in the darkness, in his troubles, in his worries, whatever the situation is. When a person attaches himself to the life force, the life source, the ultimate energy powerhouse, so everything compared to that, anything going on in his life becomes null and insignificant compared to the fact that he's now hooked up to the energy source. That's what David meant when he said David's Midas Karisalu. But the Alter Rebbe then says that he was giving a praise about Zmiros. In other words, how the Torah takes care of his physical worries, situation, Zmiros, it cuts away negativity. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe says that that's all the chitzonis of Torah. Getting back to what I said before, that Torah does not constitute what it accomplishes. Torah is what it is. So there's the chitzonius and there's the primius. The external part of Torah is the impact that it has in the world, or any impact. But the inner dimension of Torah is the fact that the Torah is Hashem himself. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe says we cannot even give the praise in such a way. I was looking for the words Alter Rebbe. So first he says, this was the delight of David HaMelech. That he sang to gladden his heart in his Torah study during his time of anguish. But the problem is that he only was talking about the external part of Torah. So it's true that all the worlds are nullified, and the worlds are nothing, and that the Torah is superior, but still, you cannot give it a praise. So v'hilchach, this is the end what the Alter Rebbe says, the v'hilchach gam l'primius ha-Torah, hence the internal aspect of the Torah too, which is Hashem himself, ein l'shvacha klal b'tihilas chayis kol ha'elames. We can't even give it a praise that is the animating force of all the worlds. For relative to the internal aspect of the Torah, They reckon there's nothingness in self. And he says this is something we can appreciate. When it comes to the inner aspect of Torah, what we can say is that it's Hashem himself, like we spoke last week. So in other words, now let me quote to you what the Rebbe says in Kuntas and Yonash Teis Chassidus. So let's say you have a person, we have a discussion. What is Torah? One person can say, you know what Torah is? Like we spoke last week, Torah is a guide for man. A person could look at himself that he's in a jungle, and we have the Torah, and the Torah tells us how to act like good people. So Torah is a guide for man, and not only that, Torah is the ultimate in morals and ethics. Okay, that's one level. So Torah is the ultimate of midos tovos. And it's true, like we spoke many times, I'm not going to get into it now, that without the Torah, it's impossible to come to the Jewish definition of philanthropy, the Jewish definition of charity, and the Jewish definition of what it means to be really altruistic. Now's not the time to get into it. We'll leave it for another time. We spoke about it many other times. Many cases where the Torah would say, you did the wrong thing if you did this and this. And if we look at it according to the secular perspective, what's wrong? It's not a problem. Just to say one example, most people, if you say, what does it mean to be a good person? Live and let live. According to the Torah, that doesn't mean you're good at all. That just means you're not a gangster. What does it mean to be good? You have to be a do-gooder machine. Go out of your way to help others. That's the point. Whatever. And so on and so on and so on and so forth. There's so many mitzvahs, and we spoke many times, Parshas Mishpatim is something that should be studied in depth, just to see the contrast between the social civil laws as defined in law, secular law, and then the concepts of how they're defined in Torah law, Seichel Eliki. So number one person will have the definition of what is Torah, the ultimate level of morals and ethics. Second person will come along, what's the Torah, the ultimate in wisdom. Now's the time to go into all the jokes about Talmud logic. Everyone knows the word Gemara cup. So that's just one example. Even the world recognizes, how Jews win Nobel Prizes and how we are the culture of the people of the book. And the Torah is called Kihichach Maschem Uvinaschem Leini Amen. The world recognizes that the Jewish nation has the greatest body of wisdom in their works and in their books. As we know about South Korea, the South Koreans have come to the conclusion that the Jewish people are smart because they learned the Talmud, and now the South Koreans are learning Talmud. There are South Koreans that are learning Talmud. According to what I understand, the Talmud was translated into South Korean. So one definition is the ultimate in ethics and morality, midas. Another definition is the ultimate in wisdom, which is wisdom, knowledge, intellect. The highest form of intellect on this world is the Torah. Then last but not least, someone can say, you know what the Torah is? Like the Alter Rebbe describes over here, Torah is not about the ultimate of moral ethics. Torah is not about the ultimate in intellect. Torah is energy itself. Energy itself, the cosmic life force of all of reality and all of existence is totally bedikta kal shel divrei seifrim. One minor carefulness in observance will revitalize and revitalizes and gives life and energy to the whole cosmic existence of everything, time, space, the universe, and all the worlds. And then we come along, like the Alter Rebbe says over here, and says, wrong. You all messed it. You all missed the point. What's the point? What is Torah? Torah is the Eibishter himself. And once we appreciate that the Torah is the Eibishter himself, and like we spoke last week, not as he lowers himself to man, but as God DNA itself, when a Yid learns Torah, that's how he becomes one on the deepest level of Hashem. As Hashem is higher, even as defined that his awesomeness is that he is the life force of all the worlds. Could you imagine? So even saying that you are connected to the essential life force of all the worlds is still nothing compared to really what Torah is, which we can't even describe. It's Hashem himself. Go over to somebody and ask him, please describe to me Hashem himself. You'll say, impossible. Now, when Rabbi gave the shir, he gave another example, and I'll just say it very quickly. I see time is running out. He said, for example, you're going to ask somebody about the mitzvah of kashrus. One person is going to say, what's kashrus? Kashrus is good for your physical body. And it's true. Like I heard from the Rabbi himself many times when he spoke about kashrus. He says, we understand some people have a salt-free diet, some people have a gluten-free diet, some people have a sugar-free diet. Then we have a Jewish diet. For the Jewish people, eating kosher is healthier. That's one level. So kashrus is good for your body. Then we have another level. Someone's going to come along and say, are you kidding? You're going to say kashrus is for your body? That's where the Eibishter gave us kashrus? Of course not. Kashrus is important for your soul. As is well known, you are what you eat. And it's well known that all the chayas that are treif comes from the word chayas turfais. Those are the predators, the ones that are mean and cruel and enjoy hunting and killing others. So therefore, the kosher animals are the more domesticated ones, the ones that are more refined. And this is what the Ramban says, it's very famous. So, how could you say that kashrus is about the body? Oh, it's about the soul. Third person is going to come along and say, you think it's about the body, you think it's about the soul, you both missed the point. It's about elevating atzilot and bria. Every time you keep kosher, it says in Kabbalah that you're being mamshich from moichen da Abba into malchus de malchus of atzilus, and then that rolls down throughout all the worlds. So it's not about you or your soul, it's about the entire existence. And the fourth person comes along and says, just like you can't say that eating kosher is about having a healthy body, in the same way you can't say that eating kosher is about bringing down godliness and infusing atzilus with a greater intensity of spiritual vitality. Because legaba lifnei atzimtzum, legaba Hashem's true infinity, atzilus and asiyah are both exactly the same. As the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 2 of the Tanya, that if we go to in relation to Hashem, as Hashem is in infinite, true infinity, he says atzilus is kasiyah gufnis nachsheves etzli yisbarich. So it's exactly the same thing. All three miss the point, and the same thing is over here. All three definitions of Torah, and it's the ultimate of morals and ethics, and it's the ultimate of intellect, and it's the ultimate life force. That all pales in comparison, is nothing compared to what the essence of Torah is. And that's why David was punished, because he was only talking about how Torah impacts the world. So he was only talking about the external part of Torah. I guess, you have to say that if David HaMelech would just say, I'm talking only about the external. Like example, somebody says, there's a tip of an iceberg. Really, there's an iceberg. This is just the tip. But since it's not clear, and someone can make a mistake, and so therefore he was punished. See the Alter Rebbe kon Zachen, see Kuntas Yonos Terech Chassidus. Now the lesson for us is obvious, how much we have to begin to appreciate when we sit and think about what the Torah is. It's not this, it's not this, it's not that. But like we spoke last week, there's Hashem, He's the Chassan, and we're the Kala, V'Risticha Lileilam, V'Aviani HaMelech, V'Aviani HaMelech, Mashcheni Acharech Nerutza, V'Aviani HaMelech Hadorov, Nagila V'Nismach HaBach. And it says in Chassidus, Haviani HaMelech Hadorov is Shavuos Matan Torah. Hashem takes us into the bedroom, his bedroom. And Nagila V'Nismach HaBach, we are totally besimcha Bach. In the Chav Beis Eisis HaTorah, Bach Batz Muscha, in the days following Shavuos, we're all elated and excited about the fact that we become one with the essence of Hashem himself. Bach Batz Muscha, through the Midat Torah. And again, everything we speak of Torah, all the qualities are true. What David HaMelech said is true. And therefore it is a pasuk in Tehillim. And it hasn't been eradicated. It hasn't been deleted. So the question is, now why? David was punished because of it. And the answer is because on a certain level, Takas mides ha'eli chukecha. And as we said before, it's good to say Torah's music. Halavai felt that Torah was music all the time. We just have to add one footnote. Remember that this is only talking about the external part of Torah. There's much more to that. But the truth is, and that's how we're meant to feel, but to realize, but wait, there's more. And this is connected to Pirkei Avos this week, just one connection. The second Mishnah, Perek Aleph, says, Shimon HaTzadik, Hay Meshira Knes Agdela, Hu Hay Omer, Al Shleisha Dvarim Ha'olam Oimed. And three things the world stands, Al HaTorah, Al Aved, Al Gnes Chasodim. So in light of everything we said till now, obviously this is not the ultimate of what Torah accomplishes. It's just one of the things that it accomplishes is that it also sustains the world. So Torah is a lot more than that. By the way, I forgot to mention one more detail that the Alter Rebbe mentioned over there in Tanya, so I'm just going to say it, is he was punished. There's a lot more to it. I can't get into it now. But he was punished with forgetfulness. Why was he punished with forgetfulness? Because the Alter Rebbe says forgetfulness comes from chitzonis. When you have an idea in your head and doesn't occupy the innermost place in your mind, then you forget. Like, for example, you ask a friend, someone's going to 7-Eleven. And you say, Reuven, you're going to 7-Eleven? Do me a favor, don't forget to buy me a bottle of Coca-Cola. Anyways, Reuven comes back. And he turns to Shimon. He says, Shimon, I'm so sorry. I forgot. And then Shimon says, you know what? That's the problem. When it came to the things that you went to 7-Eleven for yourself, that you didn't forget. When it came to the things that I asked you, you forgot. Why? Because it was chitzonius. It was in an external place in your brain space. It didn't occupy the pneumius of your brain space. So therefore, this is what the Alter Rebbe explains. Because David HaMelech, when he said Zmiris Ha'eluchi Kecha, was only describing the chitzonius of the Torah, the external aspect, but not really what Torah is, only what it accomplishes, which is the external part of Torah. So therefore he was punished that a certain law connected to the Torah, he forgot, because just like he looked at Torah and spoke only about the external, so therefore the Torah, by him, a certain law about the Torah became external, and therefore he forgot it. Now, there's more to explain exactly about the nature of this commandment, how they carry the Aron, how it's more connected to Pneumius, why is there this mitzvah in the first place, but we'll have to leave that for another time. The Eibusher should help. We should be hung over in a good way from Shavuos as long as we can, staying excited from Matan Torah, integrating, absorbing, so it should resonate more and more, our gishmak, our koch, and our limud of Torah. The Eibusher should help that if we do our part, Hashem will do His part, and we'll come to the Torah Chadoshim, take it from Yad, Mamesh, Begula Mitzvah Shlema. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.